I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, knowing who you really are. Part of it is environment, but a big part of it also is genes. For people who are put up for adoption at birth, the latter, of course, is a mystery that many seek to unravel in their journey to identity. That's also the name of a mesmerizing book penned by my next guest, Jillian Cawthorn. It is called Journey to Identity: The Life, Loves, and Torments of a 1944 Adoptee. We welcome Jillian to Spotlight today. We ask viewers watching on YouTube to please subscribe to support writers like Jillian by subscribing to our channel. Jillian, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.
The pleasure is mine. Your book is wonderful. It documents an incredible journey that you took. And I think it's such an important read for all people in their journey to identity, because I think we're all trying to figure out who we are. And I think that adoptees in particular have quite a task at it. Tell me a little bit about the story, or let's tell the viewers a little bit. At 8 years of age, you find out of the blue you're adopted, and it's told to you in a very brutal fashion, actually.
Yes, it was a so-called friend, my mother's daughter. She was a friend, a little bit older, and one of the gang that we used to play in the back street, till all hours of the night and go in for our tea and then go home again. And we were just walking down the path as usual, and she was a lot taller than me, and she just turned around and said, they're not your mum and dad. The Wilsons are not your mum and dad. You don't belong there. They're not yours, and you're not theirs. And I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? And about that time I was starting to cry, and she said, well, you were adopted. You were adopted. And I didn't know what the word meant.
Right.
But I knew that it was something nasty, the way she was talking. So that's how I found out. That's how I found out.
Horrible way to find out. I mean, basically being tormented and teased by another child who somehow knew this carefully guarded secret that wasn't that carefully guarded.
It was carefully guarded because apparently I was, smuggled into the Wilson household at 6 weeks old. Not before, because the mothers in those days could keep the child for 6 weeks and feed them, and then they had to be taken away to whoever. So I was bundled into the house at the night time. So I was told later, not knowing anything and why. And that's what happened. And I appeared to the neighbors, and it was a case of nobody knew, but everybody knew.
Right.
But it was behind, the curtains. And
suddenly tell me your reaction when that child told you that. Did you go to your mom and say, Mom, is this true? Tell me about that conversation.
Yes, it is in the book, but actually I ran into the street to find my younger brother, who was 10 months younger than me. He was the natural child they finally had. And I told my brother David, and he just grabbed my hand, and we ran back to the house. And David, at 7 years old, confronted our mother and said, "Is this true?" And yes, and that's when she said, yes, but we were never going to tell you.
Now, did your mom cry? Tell us a little bit about your reaction. Tell us a little bit about that interaction when...
No, she didn't cry. She was silent for a few seconds, and then her face turned red and very hard, and she just stared at us and me, and then she said, we were never going to tell you. And her mouth pursed, and then she just said, go away and forget about it. We won't talk about it again.
Which isn't the healthy thing to do at all. You need to talk about it. You have so many questions at that point, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It just, I knew that from a very early age, I knew that I was different, but I didn't know why. And I always felt the odd one out in groups and things like that, and very self-conscious and very unsure of myself. And then when this happened, it all sort of fitted into place, really. At that young age, I still knew this was the reason, but the damage was done to me.
Right.
The damage was done.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah,
was the era. Today, we're told to talk about our feelings, to explore things that people's feelings are held on a high level. But back when you were a child, children were to be heard, seen, and not heard. I mean, they were told to be
absolutely.
quiet, you know.
Absolutely.
So it was a tough era. Part of the pain you were feeling is a sense of rejection from your birth parents, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Rejection. Nobody likes being rejected on one occasion, never mind, the big question, the big rejection when all you know is that you weren't with your birth mother, and you read into it that you were rejected. And this is a massive thing for everybody. But to know that you're not needed by your actual mother, to me, it was just beyond comprehension. How can somebody gives birth not want a child, not want their child? And I was so young, but I still mulled all this in my head, and I knew there was something really wrong, but I wasn't going to give up. I just didn't. At 8 years old, I didn't have much choice, but it was something the back of my mind told me someday I'm going to find out. I just had to find out
Ex-
what was happening.
We were talking a little bit before we started about the importance of a mother and the mother role. So your yearning to find out more about your mother is sort of like what everybody wants to know, what their mother was like before they had children, their mother's life. You want to explore, but you had no idea who your mother was. And this was going to really be a central part of forming who you are. I mean, that's why your book is Journey to Identity, right?
Yes, because the minute you hear that, you just feel you don't belong.
Mm.
You don't belong anywhere. Your brother isn't your brother. Your other brother isn't your brother. The aunts and uncles are not yours.
Yeah.
You are a solitary figure in the middle of all this so-called family, and you just don't belong anywhere, and you don't know where you're going. You just got nobody directs you because they don't know either. They can only go by what they know, what they are told, which is nothing, but what they would like to believe you may become, you may be interested in. They're only guessing. So what chance do you have? There's no guidance. There's no guidance to anything. They can just put you where they think you'll benefit, like a private school. Yeah, that's got to be beneficial if you're
Mm.
adopted, because we don't know what's happened to you in the past or what your mother's like, or apart from being a nasty person. So we'll put her in a private school, and that's wonderful. That will mold her and give her the right principles and all that sort of thing. And that was the answer. That was one answer, and probably the only one that they knew.
Mm.
That was them, middle class. That was the only thing they knew, was probably the only thing that would benefit me at that time: a good schooling, a paid for schooling.
Right. Now, a lot of adoptees are told throughout their lives that you are special, you are different, we chose you. Has that brought you some solace? Has that brought you some peace? The fact that your adopted parents wanted you. So you were rejected on one hand by your birth parents, but you had this other family that wanted you in their lives.
In theory,
Mm.
yes, they did, because they were young couple, sort of late 20s, I think, and they wanted a family, and they found that that wasn't happening naturally. So they wanted children because everybody did.
Mm.
It was what they did. But I never ever was told that I was special.
Mm.
It was just the opposite. That really. Uh, it was just something that I was never ever led to believe, that I was chosen or I was special. Let's just adopt a little girl who happens to be available, and we've heard about her, so we'll take her. We have a little boy who was felt they adopted for another reason,
Mm.
and then they had the natural child. But I never ever, I don't think any of us was made to feel special. Even my brothers and the natural child, it just wasn't what they did in those days in
Yeah.
any way. in any way.
Exactly.
Now it's a very different situation, a very
Now we're very child-centric. The whole
yeah.
family dynamic is built around the child. Very, very different when you were growing up. Very, very different when I was growing up. And some will say we're better for it, but that
I
decision
don't
will be
know.
made later on. Let me
Yeah.
ask you a little bit about your journey to find your adopted mother. Tell the audience what that took.
Well, it was not possible in any way until the mid-70s because the law just would not allow it. And the parents, the adoptive parents, do sign something, papers to say we will not attempt to find the mother. So I was absolutely stuck until the mid-70s, by which time I was 30 something. And a lot of damage had happened and occurred and done to me in those years. And then the law changed to say simply, that adoptees could have access to the birth certificate. That was all. That was all. So what did that mean? Did it mean we just got a birth certificate and that was it? We were stuck? Where do we go from here? Because there were no help centres as there are now, like Age UK and Samaritan, Citizen, for anybody who needs help for any issue.
It also wasn't the digital age where you could just Google the person's name and get 20 people with that name. I mean, so you were dealing in an analog age back in the era where you were trying to find your parents. So it was
Yes.
definitely more of a challenge.
It was a challenge, yes, and it also was a challenge within, because you sit there where once you get your certificate, your birth certificate, thinking, what do I do with this now?
Right.
Where do I go? And do I want to go? Do I want to find out? Now I have the opportunity to follow this. Do I really want to know? What's it going to be? Is she not going to want me?
Right. And God forbid you were rejected again. God
Well,
forbid she closed that door in your face, right? You're feeling all of that. I mean, there's a lot of
exactly.
doubt, there's a lot of hesitation, there's a lot of anxiety. But then you said to yourself, yes, I need to know.
Yes, yes. The decision was that regardless of what happens, if I knock on her door, I have to do it. I have to do it. But of course, in there comes the guilt that you feel towards the adoptive
Right.
parents. Yeah. So
Feels like betrayal on some level, right?
yes, because they had done or were doing, still doing what they knew only as parents, and they weren't bad.
Mhm.
They weren't evil people,
Right.
but so there was a massive mess in my head, thinking, if I do this, am I going to regret that? And I feel so guilty, but I still had to do it. I still had to do it. So that was my journey to identity. And I didn't actually actively do anything for a few years because of this mess in my mind. And would I regret it?
Tell the audience about your first meeting with your birth mom.
It's in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we want to save that for the book, we can absolutely save that for the book. It is an incredible book. The name of it, again, is Journey to Identity, The Life, Loves, and Torments of a 1944 Adoptee. Let's not get into the meeting with your mother. Let's save that for the book, as you mentioned. Let's talk about after meeting with your mother. Did your life feel like it was more joined together? Did you feel like you had found your identity?
Yes,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Um, uh, as you say, we'll keep away from that in the actual meeting,
Right.
but because it is the end
And
of
that
the.
is the as we say, the money shot. That's the most important part of all this. And you do want to read the journey, and it's important for people to experience all those emotions that you lay out in your book so well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your life. I mean, a lot of it has been this search for identity. Tell us a little bit about your career, about your life in England, about your family, that kind of stuff now.
Well, because of the adoption, I really didn't know where I was going. I didn't know. Uh, I hadn't. I had no idea what I had inherited from mother, father, and what was in the family. So I was lost a bit during my career. I just knew that I wanted to be a hairdresser. That's the only thing I knew. It was very much against my adoptive father's wishes.
Right.
And he said, if you are going to do that, you will go into to a college. You will not go into a salon. That was a sort of mentality, which was absolutely fine.
Right.
So I did that, and I came out and decided I couldn't do it because I didn't have the confidence in me to actually deal with people.
Mhm.
And that became a big issue in my life, dealing with people, especially more than one. Groups, I was just absolutely useless in, and parties, I would walk away from parties long before I was due to leave because I couldn't deal with it. So I went into the city and worked in a bank and did a lot of secretarial work, which I found incredibly boring, and all the
Right.
time thinking there is something more for me out there. I have a different or different abilities somewhere, but I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how to find out because I had to earn a living.
Mhm.
And so I just plodded on in commerce and PA secretary work in London, because it gave me a good salary, and I could exist and have good holidays, but it wasn't ever what I wanted to do.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think part of your path obviously is author, because again, to our audience, I highly recommend this book, Journey to Identity, The Life, Loves, and Torments of a 1944 Adoptee. Your genes obviously were great genes. You look wonderful, Jillian, and we're delighted to have you here as a guest today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much.
And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on Spotlight.